Hello students, today we start lecture course of normal physiology. My name is Evgeny Anatольевич. I'm PhD of physiology. And the topic of our today's lecture, introduction in normal physiology. First of all, I want to tell you several words about this new discipline. Normal physiology you will study 1 year till summer. This discipline ends by the exam. And on this subject, you will know information about body functions, how it works properly. Normal physiology discuss questions only about normality of the function. It is basic information for the discovery and study of the pathological processes. You will know about it on another department, that is pathological physiology. So, as usually, we start study from the definition of the science. Okay, so physiology. What is a physiology? Physiology is a science about vital functions, vital functions. What means vital functions? Vital functions is the process of the working of our internal organs, our internal physiological systems, and on this discipline we will study this process, how it performs, how it changes, what factors influence to the function of any organ, any system. Okay, science about vital functions and how it changes under actions of the external environmental changes, about vital functions and physiological changes that happens in environmental stimulus. Okay, external environment is changeable medium. It constant influence to our body, and in this situation our body needs to adapt to this stimulus. Okay, so physiology study not only basic processes of the life. It study process of the interaction between body and external environment, and study process of the adaptation. It means how our body changes body functions under these influences. Okay, we will study aim of this process. Okay, and for the understanding of these interactions, we need to know some terminology of the discipline, and first of this is a physiological function. Physiological function. What is physiological function? Physiological function is any manifestation of the living process usually with adaptive result. Okay. Examples of the physiological functions. We know this like simple body processes like respiration, digestion, excretion, etc. This is physiological functions. Next important terminology is physiological reaction. Physiological reaction. Physiological reaction is the changes of physiological functions under action of the stimulus. Changes of the physiological functions under action of the stimulus. Okay, any physiological functions describes with help parameters of the function. Parameters of the functions. For example, for the cardiac activity, these parameters are heart rate, stroke volume, minute volume. So it means how much heart pump of the blood per 1 minute. Okay, so and a physiological reaction can indicate how changes parameters of the physiological functions under stimulus. Of course, significance of the physiological reactions, it is always adaptation. Okay, so and third one is physiological adaptation. Physiological adaptation. What is a physiological adaptation? Is a set of physiological reactions that uses for adaptation to changes of environment. Okay, so changes of the environment, and in these changeable conditions, we have a risk of the changes of our internal parameters. We need to exclude this because in process of the life maintaining, our body try to maintain constancy of the internal liquids. Constancy it means in chemical composition and physical properties. It should be constant because it is very important for the maintaining of the proper activity of our cells. Okay, it is a very important principle. We can maintain our living process only in presence of the regulation of the functions that help us for the physiological adaptation to these situations. Okay, so and very useful, we will use in explanation of the physiological process this terminology like physiological regulation. Regulation is the influences to physiological function for changes of parameters of physiological function. Okay, we need this for maintaining of homeostasis. Maintaining of the homeostasis. Okay. So and now we continue this and discuss this process. Homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis primarily described and discovered by the scientist with no name Walter Cannon. In 1932. And Walter Cannon describes this value like relative dynamic constancy of internal environment means usually chemical and physical parameters of the internal liquids. Okay, so for example, parameters of the homeostasis we can describe in the chemical composition. For example, for the respiratory values, this concentration of the two main respiratory gases, like oxygen and carbon dioxide, in arterial blood. For our arterial blood, should be around 100 mm of mercury. For carbon dioxide, is around 40 mm of mercury. And our physiological functions and reactions want to maintain this optimal level because it needs for optimal supplying and supplying with oxygen and excretion of the carbon dioxide. For maintaining all these values, we need to optimize, make an optimum function of the respiratory system. Because activity of the respiratory system should changes when we change activity. For example, when we change our resting position to the physical exercise, changes consumption of the oxygen by the muscular tissue, changes production of the carbon dioxide, and we need to influence our brain center, give a command to our respiratory muscles to make changes in the ventilation for the maintaining of the parameters in this stable level. Because we have a risk in this new activity of the decreasing of oxygen in internal liquids and increasing of the carbon dioxide. To exclude this not good situation, we need to make reaction, okay, for maintaining of the homeostasis, because it can influence the activity of the other tissues. Not only muscular tissue need to optimal transport of respiratory gases. All tissues in this situation need to maintain optimal transport, and this transport needs these proper concentrations, and our body with reactions try to maintain this stable level by own mechanisms of the regulation. Okay, so conception of the homeostasis very easy to understand with this simple scheme. Okay, our organism consists of the many billions of the cells that located inside our body, and for maintaining of the optimal living process of these cells, we need to receive energy and substrate for the building process, for the synthesis of the new substances. And these substances we can receive only from external environment. Okay? External environment. External environment. These exchanges happens in both directions. Part of these substances we receive from surrounding space. For example, we have special organs of the contact with external environment, like lungs, GIT, kidney, and skin. Lungs help us to receive oxygen and help to eliminate carbon dioxide from internal environment. GIT help to receive nutrient substances like protein, carbs, and fats. This is nutrient substances uses for oxidative processes of the cells, for receiving of energy and like building material. Skin is excretory organ, help to eliminate water, salts, some products of the metabolism. Kidney too, excretory organ. Okay, so and our cells cannot directly interact with external environment through these barriers. We need to transport these substances in our internal liquids. So our cells surrounded by extracellular fluids. These fluids we will name and group into the internal environment. Internal environment include extracellular fluids like blood and lymph. It is intravascular. Intravascular liquids and liquid that directly surrounded our cells. It is interstitial or tissue fluid. Tissue fluid. All these liquids are the mediums for the step-by-step transportation of the substances in our body. We can name this like compartments of the body. These compartments are separated with barriers, with biological barriers. For example, blood and lungs separated with help respiratory barrier in the lungs. Our tissues and the blood separated by the blood tissue barrier. That it is complex of the membranes, of the basal membranes, membranes of the cells. Okay, so and when gas, for example, gas wants to transport it to the cell, first of all, it needs to penetrate through the blood pulmonary barrier. Then with help blood circulated in our vessels, transported to the tissue, then in tissue fluid, this substance by the passive and active mechanisms travel inside the cell and then include into the metabolical reactions of the cell. And opposite direction of this movement is transportation of the excretory products like CO2. First of all, it excreted to the tissue fluid, then from tissue fluid transport to the circulatory system, and with help circulatory system it transported to the specific organ of the contact. In this case it is lungs, and eliminated from the body to the external environment. Okay, and parameters of the respiratory functions like respiratory rate, tidal volume, breathing rate influence to the intensity of the transportation of the gas. Main task of this, it is maintaining of the stability of the gas concentrations of two respiratory gases, in this case, oxygen and carbon dioxide. Our aim is the optimization of the exchanging of these gases between cell and tissue fluid. Okay, it is possible only in case when this level is optimal. Okay, so thus we can give conclusion about it. Conception of the homeostasis tell us that our body, our organism, using energy of the nutrient substances, using oxygen in process of the metabolical reactions, try to maintain stability of the parameters of the internal liquids like blood, lymph, and tissue fluid for optimal supplying of the body cells in very changeable external environment. Okay, external environment produce some stimulus to the body. This stimulus can change our body parameters, and our body using own regulatory process, regulatory processes of the physiological function try to resist to these changes, resist to this pressure of the external environment. I can change parameter of some functions for the maintaining of our homeostasis. Okay, so it is very interesting process, interesting physiological process that we'll discuss in discovery of any physiological system. Okay, we will talk about separately about respiratory process, digestive process, excretory process, and always we'll combine it with conception of the homeostasis and regulation of the physiological functions. Okay, so continue.